Okay, we are recording, and you guys, we have a really special guest today. So with us, we have Kaypri, and she, was introduced to me by one of the listeners, one of you guys out there in the world, one of our community members, Venice. So Venice, if you're watching and listening, thank you so much for bringing her into my life. She's an inspiration to me. I have yet to even see her performance, which we're going to talk about today. And I just am inspired by your experience. I'm inspired by what you've created as a result of your experience. There's a lot of, mirroring going on in my life to your life. Of course, different circumstances and different expressions of what we're creating in the world to support people, to inspire people, and to really get the information out there. So you actually created like a whole produced play, like a whole production called The Good Daughter and the Do-Gooder. So Kaypri, thank you so much for being here and having this conversation with us and sharing yourself, because I just love what you're up to.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to share this story with whoever is there to get it, because it's important. It's bigger than my story. It's become a calling and a mission to be a voice for caregivers everywhere, particularly in my quote unquote hip hop generation. But I've had people of all ages respond to this piece in ways that I never would have imagined. So it's really been an awesome experience.
Yeah, and your authenticity and your just like playfulness and connection to the experience that you've been having with your mom, who now is 85 years old. And so share with us a little bit, like, how did this start? Like, what's going on in your life and your situation, and really what this is about for people listening. You guys, she's going to have her next opportunity to go see her production in May 2018, if you're listening to this later, and I'm sure there will be more dates to come around Mother's Day. So that Mother's Day weekend, and I'm excited. I want to go up and see you. So tell us a little bit about everything.
Well, this is actually my second solo show. My first solo show kind of focused on my just coming of age, the elementary, preteen, adolescence, coming up to college. And I call this my adult coming age. I call it the coming of age of caregiver, because my mother was such a big part of my life. She taught me everything I knew. She raised me. My father was there, but he was traveling a lot during my childhood. So it was really just, as I say in my play, it was like me and mom against the world. And she's the youngest of 6 children. And as her siblings started passing away, a lot of them, dementia and Alzheimer's, had been a part of that. So she kind of knew it was coming, and she prepared just in case. And part of my mission with this story is not only to talk about the caregivers of the present, but the caregivers of the future, so they can start thinking about those difficult conversations they need to have and start preparing, because, preparing for the inevitable, because these things will happen. I never planned to write this story. I had written my mom's story. My mother had started writing her autobiography in her late 60s. She was actually a white female that got involved in civil rights beginning in the 50s, and kind of discovering and exploring this idea of white privilege before it was a term. And just as she said in her book, a very different thing to be in a different colored skin. So she'd worked on this book for a long time and taken writing classes and went to writing conferences and really grew as a writer, whereas I had been writing the entire time. So I became her kind of advisor and her editor, and she'd send me chapters. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So I'm emailing back and forth with her. I was living in New York and she was in New Jersey, and then I went to LA and the same thing was happening. And then one day there was a phone call, and that's kind of the catalyst of realizing that things had shifted with my mom, and that time was starting to come, and all that preparation that had been done now was coming of age, basically. And as she got closer to 80, I realized she wasn't going to be able to finish this book by herself. And so it was a huge thing on her book bucket list, and I couldn't let it be undone. And because she'd shared parts of it with me, I was able to share those reflections. So at the end of different chapters, there's daughter's notes where I kind of write, I remember my mom telling me this about this experience, and this was difficult for her, and this was great for her, and this broke her heart, and I wish she had, type of thing. So a friend of mine a couple years ago who lives out of state, we were having a phone conversation, and she said, well, why don't you write a solo play to be a companion to your mother's book, which is called I Didn't Know What I Didn't Know, A Southern White Woman's Story About Race. And that's her title. I did not make that up. I kept her title. I kept as much of the book authentic to her voice and her writing as possible. I basically finished, I would say, I'd put the finishing touches on and embellish some things that were kind of not finished. So I was just like, And I started writing this piece about how me and my mom were different and how we were the same, because at the time I was in my early 40s. She had me at 40. We had both, we were similar and different. Like, I was always a very spontaneous personality, and she wanted everything planned to the T. And I was the free spirit, and she was more conservative in that way. So, there are ways I'm like her. My love for literature, my love for the arts, that's her fault, which I'm very blessed to have. But writing this play, I was just kind of writing these comparison things, that we both had old fathers, and my mother, being the youngest, had a very different relationship with her father than she did with than her siblings did, because there was like a 17-year age difference between her and the oldest child, and that was actually the closest sibling she had. Whereas me, my dad had an 18-year-old son when I was born, and so he had a different experience with a much healthier father. My father had a stroke when I was in 3rd grade, and that's a lot of what Baby Girl, my first solo show, is about. But as I continued writing this piece, I actually saw a documentary about the playwright August Wilson, and was reminded how he's a collagist. And then I remembered that I had this document on my computer called Mother's Mind. And it was a document that I went to and wrote poetry or prose or thoughts or whatever when I had different interactions with my mother through the years. So I decided to take those pieces and kind of group them together and make titles for each piece or each emotion or whatever, each subject. Cut all the titles out on pieces of separate pieces of paper, like little paper strips. Put them on the floor, and I arranged them. And that was basically the structure for what became The Good Daughter and The Do-Gooder. And that was January. And then I knew of a theater that was had a really great deal in April. So I challenged myself in March to put this thing together, to do my first public reading. And this was 3 years ago. And the response I got, even though it was overwritten and long and everything, the response I got from the audience was just, I knew I had something. And I continued to workshop the piece. And then little less than a year ago, I found out about an opportunity to submit for a TV writing program. And they took plays, and they took solo plays. And for the first time in the history of this program called New Humanitas, you didn't have to get referred by some industry professional. It was open to all. And I didn't really think Good Daughter was ready, but I just worked on it as much as I could. And I for about a month or so, and I submitted it like, well, this is the best I've got. I still don't think it's ready. And to my surprise, I was a finalist. And I beat out like hundreds of people to be a finalist. And this was like a pretty big deal, because I'd heard of this award for a long time. So then I was like, oh, well, maybe this thing is more ready than I thought. And so I just kept molding and shaping it. And I presented it last fall. I presented it at a solo festival in February. And now I'm going to present 3 shows in a row, Mother's Day weekend, and which is totally appropriate because it's a mother-daughter story. But it's also just a family story, and it's a celebration of mothers and what they do for their children, and in turn what I've been able to do for my mother, paying it forward. The roles have reversed, accepting that reversal. Everything I went through with moving my mother from the East Coast to here, I just, and my story, like I said, is unique and different, but it's universal. And just having people from all walks of life tell me how it resonates with them, whether they're a caregiver now or were a caregiver 10 or 20 years ago, or just starting. I'm just glad to be a voice for people, because if you're not a caregiver, you don't think about it. And you're just like, oh, well, that person's taking care of their parent, and it just kind of goes out your head. You're not thinking about what that really means. And I think this piece would be good for people in their lives who they know don't really get it, to show them. And, you know, I've really had a great experience with very close friends of mine, understanding a little more about what I'm going through. And I think to give that is a real gift, because especially if the parent isn't living with you, they don't think it's that bad, but I'm living proof it's still hard. And it doesn't matter where the parent is. If you have responsibility of any kind for a parent, it's a big deal. So that's kind of how the piece evolved. Like I said, it wasn't planned. I was never going to do another solo show. My first one was such a big part of my life, and it still is. But this one is just kind of my adult baby girl piece, and really getting in touch with this new phase of my life. As I say in my play, my mother is my first child. I have to think about her every single day. And that's how parents, I think, feel about their children. I have not become a parent yet. And, you know, that's something I'd like to do sometime. And I'm already past the age my mom was when she had me. So there's a lot of stuff with that. But right now, I feel like the more people I hear this story, the more healing and understanding will come about. And it's not just about, this is my story, you should hear my story. This is so many people's stories. And so many people are not ready or not able to express what I have been able to do. But I've always been very open about what goes on with me, especially if I know it's going to help other people. I mean, that's the way my mother raised me, to help other people. And that's where the do-gooder thing. She kind of overdid it, but I've been able to rein it in a little bit. But definitely through my art, through my writing, through my acting, through my producing, making a difference is at the heart of it, and touching people and uplifting them.
Well, and you are, and I love what you just hit on, which is, you know, as a function of your production, this Good Daughter, you know, there's, on one hand, it's cathartic and it's an expression and it's an opportunity for those of us who are in the caregiving role, whether it's our parents in this case, but even a spouse or a loved one, that can actually feel the emotions and really relate to your story. And obviously the circumstances don't have to be exactly the same, right? But it's just that experience of what's going on, like just really getting the world of it. And even in your video, which I'll share the link in this email that I send out with this video, you know, it's so touching, and your level of ability to drop into the authentic and the vulnerable, like, experience that you've had with your mom, and how you've been able to and have been there for her, got, you know, your whole experience. It's just, I mean, it brought me to tears. And so it's what really inspired me to want to have this conversation with you, to share it with everybody else, to get potentially more people butts in seats at your show in May, because I'm excited. And I just think that that's so, like, when people have an ability to feel gotten, like they feel like they're understood, and they feel like they're heard, and they feel like they're appreciated, because at the fundamental base of our humanity, like, we want to be acknowledged, and there's a sense of wanting to be loved, and that's okay. And this stage in our life that we're at right now, with a lot of us coming into caregiving at various expressions of it, for us to band together as a community to really support each other for the what's so and what's going on, and really talking about it and bringing breath to it. So I acknowledge you for creating this, for doing it so powerfully, so beautifully. And then I love the conversation of, yeah, educating people who aren't there yet, because there's a whole wave of people who are just, you know, considering, like, oh, wow, this actually could be my life here soon. And what does that look like? And how do I prepare for it? What is it, you know, and not even really understanding the breadth and the scope of what kind of that which is coming comes. So acting as an educational piece for family members, for our society, to really get present to, like, what's going on.
Yeah.
It's huge. I mean, this is so huge. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, because I had older parents, I was introduced to this very early on. My father had a stroke when I was in 3rd grade. My mother was caring for him. And I didn't, saw through a child's eyes, but when I started, having to do her pills, I remember how my mom did that for my dad when I was like in elementary school up until he passed away. And it was just, and then I remember my aunt took care of my grandmother, and that was my introduction to dementia, but it was called senile then. And so this has been a theme of my life, all my life, but I didn't really realize it until it became my responsibility. And it's just, and because most of my friends' parents are younger than my parents, I'm the first to experience this. And I'm trying to talk to them. I'm like, are you talking to your parent? Like, did they do all their paperwork? Have you seen it? Because my own mother had paperwork that didn't have me as a beneficiary, and had somebody else as executor of the will. And somebody had me check on that, who was actually in the financial services field. And it was a friend of mine. And I was like, I'm sure that's done. And she said, you got to check. And she kept on me. And finally I was like, okay, fine, I'll check. And I was like, what? And then when I tried to talk to my mother about it, she couldn't see the problem. And that's when I knew that the mental stuff really was having an effect more so than I would have ever realized. And I had to find a way to fix that and make it peaceful. And we basically had to compromise until I was able to activate the power of attorney. And then I could just take care of everything. But yeah, my own mother didn't have me as a beneficiary. And, and I say this in the show, I'm like, even, she had someone else who wasn't even a family member, like, over everything, and didn't understand why I was upset. So, and that's a small part of the play, because I just kind of do that part and I'm like, okay, that's that part. But the most of it is just sharing the journey of a mother and a daughter 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the bond and what some of what we went through, particularly in my 20s, and some of the challenges we had, and then kind of getting my life and doing my thing. And then it gets interrupted by this phone call that changes everything. Not right away, but the gradual type of thing. And then the realities that kept hitting me. And then when I realized she can't stay on the East Coast, she needs to be with me. And she said she was never moving anywhere, never going to move anywhere ever again. And I had to convince her, but that wasn't easy. That was begging on my knees for an hour. And so that's in the play. Like, so I really cover the whole journey up to the present, where the highlight of my day is seeing my mother smile because she no longer has her voice. And her not having her voice is actually a theme in the show as well, because women of that generation didn't really speak up to their husbands. And my mother was no different, even though she was this pioneering civil rights person and worked outside the house and got married till she was 40 and didn't get her MRS degree right away and did all these revolutionary things for women who graduated in their 50s from college. There was a part of her that still, even though she was a feminist, did not stand up to my dad. So this piece allows me to give her the voice that she didn't use and be a voice for caregivers and just give everybody a voice, because it's such a not spoken about thing in our society. And I don't think if you ask the average everyday person, what do you think a caregiver's life is like, they really would know how to answer that truthfully. It's just not being talked about, and it's hitting more and more of us at a younger age than it used to. And I'm trying to warn all my friends, but I want to warn more than my friends. I want to let everybody know this is coming. No, it's not easy to talk about, but you need to talk about it. And because you will have so much greater peace of mind, because God forbid, like a friend of mine who lost a parent a year ago, there was no will. It's still in probate. So, I mean, and the other thing is you can become a caregiver overnight. You can join us that quickly and there'll be no warning. I had a little warning, it was coming, and my mom could do some preparation, but one thing could change everything. And I'm just really passionate about getting this message out. And like I said, it's bigger than my story. It's about all of our stories, all of our challenges, the support there is support out there that people don't know about. It's not on billboards. And, you know, like respite care. A lot of people don't know about that. And I know when I found out about it, I would tell other people I knew who were caregiving, and they were like, thank you so much for telling me. Just to think about 1 or 2 days where you are off and someone else is taking care of it. Like, but people don't know about that because it's not on the local news. You know, you have to really research. And people get so overwhelmed by their lives and all the caretaking, they forget to take care of themselves.
Since you brought that up, share a little bit about that and what that looks like for people listening.
The respite, or just the respite, they have programs in certain states. It's different in different states. When my mom was living in North Carolina, I found out about one where she could have went somewhere for like 2 days, and the caregiver, because I wasn't living in North Carolina at the time, could have had like a break. So it allows, some of them are free, some of them have a small fee, but getting that break is just essential because you don't want to have caregiver burnout. And I experienced that with one of my mother's sisters, where she was the healthy one and her husband had emphysema, and all of her sisters were going to do all this special stuff for her once he died, and then she died of an aneurysm. Just quickly, just overnight. And that was my introduction. You know, like I said, this caregiving thing, it was there all along. But respite, and they have certain services that will pay you to take care of your loved one in your home. If you're the caregiver, there's some compensation, and you could use that to maybe pay someone to give you a couple hours to yourself. It's just, the self-care is so important, and that's a part of my show as well, is just really taking that time out, because I didn't see my mom do that for herself in her regular life. And I was always telling her, breathe. You're retired. Why are you stressing out? And she's like, I've got so much to do. And I'm like, you're retired. Why are you so stressed out? But her anxiety was just, it was stressful. And I wish, like, some of the things that I have kind of been mastering lately, I could go back and share with her, because I just feel like she spent so much of her life being so concerned about all she didn't do. And she spoke up for everyone but herself. And I really feel like, because she literally doesn't have a voice today, like literally, she could maybe say yes or no on occasion. I think a lot of that is tied into how she didn't honor herself. Mm-hmm. And so one of the lessons that I've learned, and why I'm in therapy, is to make sure I always speak up for myself, because I have a long history of not doing that, which is all in baby girl. And, you know, I still have my moments now as an adult, but it's real. I mean, we have to, and as caregivers, we have to speak out and say, hey, I need some help. Let me find some resources, or maybe somebody can help me find some resources. We cannot do this alone. It's impossible. I'm an only child. There's nobody else but me. Yeah. Nobody. I'm talking blood family. I don't have much blood family left. It's basically me. Holidays are hard as hell. I don't even see my mother on holidays because I just can't handle it. And she was a real Christmas person, and I can't see her on holidays. I see her so many times. Anytime I see her is a beautiful holiday or beautiful celebration. I don't see her on Thanksgiving, Christmas. It's too hard. It's too hard. I can't. People might not understand that, but that's what gives me peace. That's what makes me feel better. Because I know one day those holidays will come. She literally will not be here, and maybe I've already had the practice. I don't know, but instead of like trying to see her on those holidays and it being very painful, I just go away to a friend's house, or I went to the mountains this past Christmas. Somebody drove me. I didn't even pay money. It was great. And to have that break, to have that, it's hard. It's hard. Holidays, as soon as they come, I'm like, I can't wait for these things to be over. And then I don't really have family. Yeah, I don't really have family, so I don't have kids to buy stuff for. All my god kids are like too old for presents. So it's holidays, or I don't want to talk about it. It's rough.
Well, I acknowledge you for finding something that is working for you in order to take care of yourself over the holidays when that's challenging for you, and then looking at other days as they are holidays for when you get to spend time with your mom. And I get that brings a lot of emotions when it's the actual day of the holiday. So you choose to do something else, and that's perfect. Because it is very much so, as you just said, like taking care of yourself, you know, finding systems and ways in which that you do your life that works for you. And I love that you brought up finding some place that, you know, will care for your mom a couple of days a week, or care for your loved one a couple of days a week, to take that pressure off of you, because that stress and that anxiety and that overwhelm, well, a lot of time is a function of managing our mind around that, which is another story.
Yeah.
You know, it is about creating a system and a way of our daily interactions and actions that work for us, and always looking at what's working and what's not working, right? So that we are always kind of, I don't say optimizing, but we're always just saying, okay, great, what's the gap and how do we close that gap? Nothing wrong, nothing right, bad, you know, anything like that, but just looking at it all the time. And figuring out for yourself, because there's always that changing need that's going to happen, you know, and it happens overnight, like you said. I mean, it's literally that fast. And it's preparing ourselves, our minds, our ways of being, our, you know, family life. Like if you don't have any siblings and loved ones around you that can support, it's like, yeah, looking at what services are available, looking at what opportunities there are, how to support yourself, like with managing your emotions and all of the things. So, you know, in this, and I'm just so excited to come up and see this show, because it just is, you know, it's an opportunity to be with and to acknowledge and to share and to come together as ourselves and each other. Like, I'm excited to meet you in person as a fellow caregiver that, you know, and I'm very similar. I'm almost 38. So I'm a young one going through this as well. And, you know, also I resonate 100% with, you know, preparing people and others to be on this journey with us, because we go in and out of the stages of caregiving, down the path, and potentially it might back up a little bit as they become more functional, and then it's right back, or it's just, you know, it can be a roller coaster ride sometimes. And really just, yeah, you know, getting the tools to support us. So it's an interesting road, and I acknowledge you and everybody listening right now for whichever stage in the journey that you're at with your caregiving, and for being in the conversation of, you know, creating a life where you can have it all. You know, I mean, that's really what this is about too. It's like, how can you create a life for yourself? How can you create a life for your parents, your loved ones, to where it's working, you know? I mean, it's never perfect. Like my mom's in the hospital right now, right? It's never perfect. And it's always about, okay, what's next? How are we managing this? How am I managing this? How are we supporting ourselves and each other? And, you know, what does that look like? And just having these conversations. Oh.
Yeah, because one of the main victories in doing this piece is that it's about my journey. It's not all about my mom. And when I put her book out in 2014, my whole focus was her book. I said, I'll give her a year. And everything I did was her book and getting the word out about her book. And I didn't do a lot of my stuff. I kind of did my stuff on the side and would do this, you know, do little things here and there. But when that period ended, and I was like, okay, well now this needs to be about me, and let me get an acting class again. Let me get some of my stories. Let me finish this play. It was really a challenge, because I had literally switched everything to her, and switching it back took more than a year. And now I feel like I'm really doing my thing, which is great. And I want to also mention, as we were talking about respite, the respite could be finding a senior citizen who just needs a little extra money to take them to a doctor's appointment that's not a major doctor's appointment, to take them get their nails done, to take them to the park, to take them shopping. When I was working full time and I couldn't take my mother to places during the day, I was working in a museum, and one of the volunteers in the museum came up to me one day and she said, God told me I was supposed to help you. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I barely knew this woman. I mean, I knew her because I saw her at the museum all the time. But she would take my mom on different errands, so I could be at work and not think about, okay, my mom wanted to get this from the store, or, you know, whatever it was. It could be taking her to a movie. It could be anything. And just having that little extra help, because sometimes respite can be very expensive, but there's always a senior citizen who could use some extra money, who's a younger senior citizen, who may be in their 50s or 60s and could use a little extra money, who can take some of that load off of you. And I'm telling you, the angels I had that I mentioned in my play, it was so helpful to know that when my mother was in independent living, there was someone to help her get dressed in the morning and get to breakfast on time, because that was something she was not able to do on her own, but she wasn't ready for assisted living, but she just wasn't getting her mornings together. So I had to find these people, and even though I had to go through the red tape of getting like fingerprints and all this other stuff done, because I wasn't using their people, which they want you to do because there's more money in it, it was worth it to get her in there and have someone I knew and trusted and really had her best interests at heart. Because unfortunately, some of these people, it's just a job. And, you know, and they could talk about, you know, the good time they have with my mom, because my mom was a wonderful, she still is. And, you know, I kind of go back and forth in tenses with her, because I'll talk about what my mom used to say, because she literally can't talk right now. So it's hard because it's like who she was and who she is. And I love both people, but it's hard. This woman taught me everything I know. There's a big bookshelf behind me. That's because of her taking me to the library like every week and getting a stack of books. And I really just want to encourage people, because it's hard. It's hard, especially if you're an only child. If you're not an only child, you might be the only one in your family that's landed on, the only one without kids. And I say in my play, I said, caregiving usually lands on one child, even in big families. I am the only one. So I've been carrying this around as a single woman, as somebody with not a lot of large family ties. It's just my life. And I just have to just get through each day the best way I can. And it's not easy. And I don't cry as much as I should, but I try to wake up every morning and write something on paper just to get my feelings and emotions out, so I'm not carrying them around like my mom did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So trying to undo some of that stuff that weighed her down, so I can be lighter and freer, because it was hard watching her just take on all this stuff. And meanwhile, I'm learning this stuff that's like breathe and exhale and surrender. And my mother could not embrace those concepts that I would try to get her to. And she just,
yeah. It's beautiful. And Kaypri, I acknowledge you for being so vulnerable with us today and sharing yourself. And it's really is like you have such a giving heart, and in your desire to serve people and share with people and inspire them. And so I completely believe that's why we're having this conversation, because it's a complete mirror. And, you know, what you're asking people is what I'm asking everyone in this community, is to have the conversations with potential caregivers and support in your network, finding that senior citizen, like you just said, that's willing to take your mom to go get their nails done, to do the simple errands, to just support. My mom's been in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I actually just reached out to a local group for the women's study group to see who could potentially come to the house and be with my mom, you know. So there's a lot of opportunities that when we start having conversations and just pick up the phone and have the phone call, that all of a sudden, like you said, the angels, they arrive. And you're one of them. I'm one of them. And I've been offering to my community to reply to this email and to have a conversation with me. You know, I'm available for having a strategy call and just exploring what's going on in your life and how I can be of service to you. You're having these beautiful performances up in Los Angeles, which we're going to give you the information to, so that you can come and connect with other people, and create a network of inspiration and a network of communication and creation, to where, you know, it doesn't have to go the same way, right? It doesn't always have to be, you know, it's like, I love one of the quotes, like, you know, we do the same things and expect different results. And that's the definition of insanity. So reach out to me, come to her performance, look at tools and resources in your community to actually support your loved one, and just
support you, caregiver support groups too.
Yeah.
A lot of events just for caregivers, caregiver days. So it's not just about them. That's the main thing. It's about you as well. And you cannot forget that, because if you're not being taken care of, how are you going to take care of somebody else? Because that's what happened to my aunt. Perfectly healthy, just one day.
Yeah, it is about, really this whole conversation for me, and the whole reason why, I started raising parents I guess it's been a year and a half now, was really to support people not going down the same path that our parents did. And I love what you just touched on. It's like, if your mom, couldn't breathe and let go and have her morning ritual, whatever that is, to set her mindset, to create her day, and to, live life powerfully, it's like we as the children get to see, like, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and how are we creating our life structure now to where that's not our reality going forward. And I know for sure in my future that I'm going to get involved, I'm sure, in policy. I'm involved in environmental policy right now, and I'm sure I'm going to end up getting involved in healthcare policy soon enough.
A lot of changes need to be made, for sure.
Yeah, right? So it's, and these are a lot of powerful conversations. So Kaypri, I do acknowledge you for, your creation, for being vulnerable enough and being the one that's willing to share your story, to be an inspiration for everyone you've already inspired, the people you're inspiring now, and the countless of hundreds of thousands of people that you're going to continue to inspire. So I'm really excited to be connected to you and continue to develop this conversation out. Tell people how they can come. Tell me how we can come.
Okay. Well, the website is gooddaughter.net, and that has all the information. If you want to know more about my mother's story, which I'm always going to share the rest of my life, the website is dorothystory.com. That's D-O-R-O, as she used to tell me. It's Dorothy, not Dorothy. She'd be very specific about that. And it's going to be in Los Angeles at the New Collective, which is located on Santa Monica, just west of Vine. There's street parking. If you bring your senior, it is 2 tickets for $30. Regular price is $20. But if there's any reason that financially you don't think you can do it, please contact me. And I have a page on Facebook, Kaypri, K-A-Y-P-R-I. My website is kaypri.com. And all of those things will lead you to the Good Daughter and the Do-Gooder, a caregiver's coming of age. And I'm also on Instagram as at Kayprism, K-A-Y-P-R-I-S-M. And that is my artistic and activist platform, because I was raised by 2 activists, and I continue to be a voice for, what I believe in. So I'll let you know that up front. I don't pull any punches with that, but my mother didn't either. And part of me continuing with the activism part of it is because my mother fought for all the underdogs and all the, whether there's women or people of color or LGBT community, and I continued the donations to PFLAG, Parents and Families of Lesbian and Gays, Southern Poverty Law Center, Doctors Without Borders, Heifer, which gives food to people in underserved countries. So she was about creating, there I did go, using the past tense. My mother has lived her life of service, giving, and I wish she had given more to herself, but I'm glad that I can give her voice with this piece. And I hope you can join me either Mother's Day weekend or when I come to a theater near you, because I do plan to take this to college campuses around the country. It'll be the abbreviated version because this piece is 90 minutes, but I will be making a book version of it as well. So I'm not done. And I'm also doing a book on caregiving for the hip hop generation. And I have this is the book cover here. It's called It Ain't No Joke, because it ain't no joke, this caregiving thing. And it's important to just get this message out. It's just my passion and my calling, and more people need to understand what's involved. So this is the flyer here, and that's me and my mom when I was a little younger. And then this is us in 2015 holding her book, and then there's the book cover right there. So I really do hope that you guys can come out and be a part of it. And if you can't, you just want to get on the mailing list, you can contact me and I'm happy to add you. But thank you so much, Taylor, for inviting me on to share this. This is like I said, it's bigger than me. It's a calling that I'm meant to do. Like I said, I did not plan on doing another solo show, much less this one. And but the response I get from the audience lets me know I'm on the right track, and this is something I have to continue doing until everybody understands in this society what it means to be a caregiver, because too many people don't, and that's part of the problem. And that's what's affecting the policies and the lack of funding and the lack of understanding.
Yeah. You said it, girl. I like it. And so guys out there, so when you're listening to this, and if you're going to go, reply to this email and let me know which day you're going to go. And then I'll let you know what day I'm going to go. And if it's the same day, then maybe we can meet up and go together. And just, meet in person and come and represent and share and connect and just support this mission, everything that we're in the conversation for and of. So Kaypri, you're amazing. I'm super inspired by your creation with your production. I can't wait to be there. So yeah, reach out to her, reach out to me, let me know what day you're gonna go. Because I'm excited to meet you in person. So especially if you live in the Los Angeles area, like you got no excuse. And I know a lot of you out there in the LA area, so join us. It's going to be amazing. What a powerful weekend. Girl, you are so powerful. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your mission. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for your commitment, and you're a rock star. So, all right. Everybody out there.
You want to do a little intro to the baton since they're about to see it?
The Vimeo video that you did?
Yeah.
Yes, I will include that link in this email. It's incredibly powerful. So that's another little we need to go.
And I didn't know I was going to do that either. That was like an email with an opportunity, and I somehow put it together and won an award from the AARP. So I think I want to just add, tell your elder's story as well. I think that's part of how we care for them and their legacies, sharing their stories. And even if you're doing it just for your family, it's there for other generations. And that's one of my most proudest things that I've done, is finishing my mother's book, which she couldn't do on her own.
Which is beautiful. The fact that you took that initiative, you completed it for her, with her. I imagine that she has such a sense of peace in knowing that it's complete and that is in the world. It's of inspiration. It's also something that you and I got to share together. So yeah, for anybody listening out there where there's something like that for you, take this story as an inspiration for the possibility of looking at what you guys can create together to have that love and connection in your family. Actually, I'm working on a book as well. And one of the stories, one of the shares from a friend of mine, Kate, is that she's actually carrying out, her mom has since passed away, and she's carrying out one of her mom's wishes now, that she's really continued to inspire to create in the world. And we do developmental training so that we get out of our own way to where that actually exists in the world. And that was her request of me when we did our interview together, that I continue this as well, that she continues what she's continuing, that you continue what you're doing, and that we affect the change that we're really out to create together in community. Because really it is our voices. It is our voices. It's our sharing. It's our caring. It's our way of which that we generate in the world that will be the greatest impact.
story is medicine. That is
Yeah.
truly.
Yeah.
And just the reactions I've gotten from my mother's story, especially from Southern women, sending me little messages on the Facebook, is like, you know, I shared it. I told my sister she had to read it, and you know, and then just going to her college for her 60th college reunion, sharing it there with some of the younger people in the school, and younger alumni, because my mom got out over 60 years ago. That was very, very special to me. And a lot of her classmates were dealing with the dementia and Alzheimer's, and they were a small core group, but they had a lot of love and support for each other, as well as my mother. And just knowing my mother made an impact in the world is what keeps me on my journey and why I do what I do as an artist and as a person.
Yeah, well, you're making an impact. You're making an impact, woman. So. All right, so to recap, May, weekend of Mother's Day. What time on the evening?
The 11th and 12th at 8 o'clock, and on Mother's Day, the 13th at 3 o'clock.
Okay, so you can make a day of it. For the Sunday particularly, do a brunch and then go to the production. That would actually be a great Mother's Day to create up in Los Angeles, whether it's with yourself or you're able to bring your mother with you, and or their family, anyone really. So I'm excited. So Kaypri, thank you so much for being with us. You're amazing. Like I said, so just thanks again.
Yeah.
And to everybody in the world, we'll get back to you soon. Feel free to reply to this email and be in communication with her, with me, with your friends, your family, your loved one. Like share, 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 share. Okay, bye.
Thank you.